And I will be sharing my screen. Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us. If at any point you can't hear me, please type in the chat. My name is Karen Lewis, and I am joined with my hub colleague, Kim Loring, and we are presenting to you today Industry Hour for Nuclear Engineering. We appreciate you joining us today. This is a program that the Hub designed to help undeclared engineers learn about all the majors within the School of Engineering. So we're excited to feature our panelists today who have graduated with degrees in nuclear engineering, and we do have a current student who is a nuclear engineering major to give you some awesome perspective of what it's like a day in the life of the nuclear engineer. So for our agenda today, I do have a brief overview of the Center for Career and Professional Development, also known as the CCPD. This is an office on campus that is highly utilized by our students, and we encourage you to connect as a first-year student sooner than later. And then without further ado, we are going to feature an interview of our panelists by myself, and we are going to leave plenty of time for questions as well. So next, we have our Career Center for Career and Professional Development. And I want to switch screens here because I feel like you are looking at my presentation screen rather than the actual screen. So we're going to switch over to that. So apologies for that. The CCPD is over in the DCC. If you're in the JEC, all the acronyms that you're probably used to by now, it's directly across the brick courtyard down in the basement of the DCC. So our engineering career counselor or liaison, her name is Kristen Kettering. This is her contact information below. We encourage you to connect with her. She and the Hub actually do a lot of collaborative programming throughout the year. She just did a resume check for our recent career fair that was held 2 weeks ago. So we definitely encourage you to connect with her because there's a lot of resources that the Career Center can offer, and she is well versed in the engineering employer relations. So their services basically include resume critiquing. They have a platform called Handshake where you could set up and upload your resume, and you can look and browse career opportunities, research opportunities, internship opportunities. And they also host drop-in hours from 1 to 3 Monday through Friday. So you don't necessarily need to book an appointment directly with Kristen. You can do the drop-ins. But if you have specific questions that you want to outline with her, we do encourage you to definitely connect via appointments. They do professional headshots. They even have a closet where you have an interview and you don't have anything to wear. They could provide you some resources for that, giving you clothes to help with that and make you look professional. So there's a lot of different things that the Career Center does that helps our current students. So again, we highly encourage you to utilize them. So we were talking a little bit earlier, this is a little grainy in some of these, but some of the employers that employ nuclear engineers that we currently have relationships with, you might recognize these. Some of them is like obviously the Department of Defense and GE. We're going to have our panelists talk about a couple of these since they're currently employed with some of them. We have Cardinal Health. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can pursue as a nuclear engineer, and these are a sampling of some of them. And then we have some stats of what the class of 2023 reported as their entry level salaries upon graduation. So the average salary for a nuclear engineering student was 79,500 and the range was 78 to 81,000. Now, a couple of things worth noting, nuclear engineering is a small major within the School of Engineering, and this information is based solely off of students who volunteered to report their salaries. So everything is a little subjective there. But if you look at the overall schools, nuclear is definitely within the range of high to average. So now we have our industry hour panelists, and I will share pictures with them and then I'm going to stop sharing so they can introduce themselves to you. So let's open this up, and why don't we start with Nick?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Nicholas Thompson. I did my bachelor's, master's, and PhD at RPI, all in nuclear engineering. Um, uh, really loved my time at RPI, and got to explore lots of different, facets of nuclear engineering when I was there. Um, I did some research with Dr. Danone at the accelerator. I did some research at the reactor, which I hear shutting down, but that's a different story. But um, uh, did a lot of great things, that I love doing at RPI, and then came to Los Alamos National Laboratory as a postdoc. As part of my postdoc, I actually worked over in France for a year, in Paris. So I can talk a little bit about that as well. And then came back to Los Alamos. And at Los Alamos, what I primarily do is I do critical experiments. So I get to play with high enriched uranium and plutonium and make little tiny reactors and do all sorts of tests. So most of those are for what's called nuclear criticality safety. So it's basically making sure that when people are handling nuclear material, they don't accidentally cause a criticality accident. So we can get to figure out what those limits are by purposefully taking things too critical. And then the other part of my job, more recently, is actually working on some microreactor demonstrations. So I'm the project lead on 2 different demonstrations of microreactors that we're going to be doing out in Nevada. We're going to put basically a smaller version of a microreactor together, do all sorts of testing on that, and then those vendors can use that testing for their licensing case, essentially, with the NRC. So that's a little bit. I don't know if you want me to continue, or is that good?
Whatever you feel. What do
Okay,
you do for
perfect.
hobbies, Nick, when you're not
Oh
doing
yeah.
all of the?
So I have 2 kids. Um, so yeah, 2.5-year-old and a 6-month-old. Out here, so I live in New Mexico. You might not know it, but there's actually a lot of skiing out here. So I really like to ski, like to hike. Um, I play a lot of board games, a lot of video games. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. And Madeline?
All right. Hello, everyone. Madeline Waller. You can call me Maddie, really whatever you like. I graduated from RPI in 2019 with a bachelor's in nuclear engineering. Back when I had attended, Nick was my nuclear godfather through ANS. So whenever you hear that the nuclear industry is small, believe whoever is telling you, because it is. But after I left RPI, I went to the University of California at Berkeley for a Master of Engineering. And after that, I spent some time at Savannah River Nuclear Solutions doing criticality safety, and then went on to Westinghouse, where I am now our DOE authorization lead for our Da Vinci project. Feel free to go Google that and read it up online, but it's essentially microreactor design. Having a great time out there. I had a lot of experiences at RPI that really helped me. I was very active in a lot of the student clubs that were offered, and I did a lot of nerd things while I was on campus. If you have a chance to try the Student Run Forge, I would encourage you greatly to go check it out. Very enjoyable, very good, and for better or worse, a lot of those hobbies have stuck with me now that I actually have a career and adult people money. I have a laser cutter in my basement, and I still play with things, except now everything that I play with actually has money behind it, where I've now gotten into faceting rocks, and this is one of the pieces I have right here. It's a little D20. So just because you graduate does not mean that you leave anything nerdy behind. And a lot of the friends and experiences that you pick up while you are in school, you will take with you. I think I've had an absolutely lovely time. And as we get into things, I will try to mix in the experiences that I have gained at RPI and maybe some of the reflection that I've had on what those experiences have done for me afterwards. So passing back the mic.
Thanks, Maddie. And Grace?
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm a junior nuclear engineering major. So obviously I'm not in the workforce yet. So The extent to my experience is just studying, but I had an abroad internship last over the summer, so I do have some research experience under my belt now that we can talk about. I know we're going to have an internship little segment, but other than that, I'm a part of like a bunch of clubs and organizations on campus. I'm part of Greek Life, the concert choir. We have a pretty good music department here at RPI. Yeah, so I think definitely like going to start getting into more research and stuff like that as my time at RPI continues. But yeah.
Awesome. And I'm going to just throw it to Kim as well so she can introduce herself to everyone too. She's one of our hub advisors. So Kim.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kim Loring. I am one of the hub advisors. I currently advise aeronautical and aerospace engineers. I did advise nuclear engineers the past 2 years. So I'm happy to be here with all the panelists and Karen. And yeah, if you have any questions, just make sure you put any of them in the chat box and I'll read them after the Q&A session.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Now that we are established, let's start with some questions. And I think the most obvious one is going to be why? Why did you want to be a nuclear engineer? Did it happen early on? Did it happen while you were here that you had this revelation? Can you explain your process? And we'll start with Nick.
Sure. So I actually, when I was looking at colleges, I was looking at colleges that had astrophysics and aeronautical engineering because I wasn't sure which one I wanted to go into, but I knew it was one of those two. So I found RPI and started out as an aeronautical engineer, and I liked it. But I took this class, Intro to Nuclear Engineering. It was 1 credit, and I just absolutely loved it. Fell in love, switched majors, and I think for me, the real why was it was a field with interesting problems that were both technical and political in some cases. That you got to work in with all sorts of different people in different fields. It's just like a very fascinating field. So yeah, I switched majors and jumped right in, and been doing it ever since.
If I had a nickel for every time somebody jumped over from aeronautical engineering into nuke, I'd have 3 nickels. And it's a little bit weird that it's happened 3 times that I've heard of, but no, it's apparently a phenomenon going on. But apparently, since I was a kid, I've been a nerd. And admittedly, I started on the marine biology track when I was about 6 years old. But somewhere along the line, I developed a very, very strong taste for documentaries. And goodness, I think I might have been in middle school when I watched a documentary on Chernobyl. And that was the eye-opening. I'm like, oh, that seems like something really bad that happened, but also really cool. So naturally, because it was awful and had like this horrible civilian toll that has left a scar on the earth, I said, okay, I want to research that. And so I kept reading about it, and had another career event in high school where they were bugging us to choose a career path, and I was thinking back to all of the things that interested me, and I decided, oh, I really like this thing that, terrifies some people, is really mysterious in others, and generally draws in a lot of nerds. So needless to say, I did it, and I went in a declared nuclear engineer for my first year of college, and it held true. So if you're interested in it, if you feel an inkling that it could be really cool, there are a lot of different things to explore, and it's one of the majors that I think reaches very far across the different disciplinary boundaries. And as Nick said, with having a lot of really complex problems, that also means that you have to know a little bit across a whole lot of things to help find solutions. So it's very enriching for folks who like to puzzle through just anything facing them.
So I think I was talking about this before, but I'm from Rochester, New York, so I actually grew up like 5 minutes down the road from Ginna nuclear power plant. So I was exposed to it from an early age. Like we were talking about like reactor meltdown drills and stuff like that. So I definitely knew like what nuclear was before going to college. But I definitely knew I wanted to go into engineering because I liked math and I liked science and I liked solving problems, like all of the basic reasons that people go into engineering. But I was doing the college search during COVID. So none of the schools were open to like seeing on campus and stuff like that. There was no tours. Um, so I think my like main goal was to not cut myself off from any opportunities because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I had nuclear engineering in the back of my mind, but I just wanted to like be certain. So I came in undeclared engineering, and then I took this course, the Better World Engineering course, and that really solidified everything with that I wanted to be nuclear. Um, yeah, pretty much.
Awesome, thank you. And one thing worth noting as well, the 1 credit Intro to Nuclear course that Nick mentioned is actually offered this spring. Minimal investment of your time to learn a lot about the majors. So if this is piquing your interest and you do want to learn more, we set it up that way to seamlessly set you up. And the other thing too, you know, changing your major and being an undeclared engineer, we set you up for that as well. It's kind of easy to jump into a major like nuclear engineering at this point in time because all the courses kind of start out very similar. So it allows you to learn more about other majors and keep your options open. So moving forward, originally I was going to ask our professionals this question, but Grace, if you want to chime in as well with your internship experience, you're more than welcome to do so as well. But I just wanted you to kind of walk us through a typical day in your career. Like what's it like for a typical day to be a nuclear engineer? And we could start with Nick again.
Sure. Yeah, for me, a typical day, I'm usually in the office, working on, problems. There's computer codes where you can basically simulate nuclear systems, so I use that a lot. These days, I'm also helping to manage some teams, so have meetings with people, see how things are going, how the projects are going. But I also get to get my hands dirty as well, which is one of the things that I love about this job in particular. So every few weeks I go out to Nevada and I am, one of the people with the full, get up on, full coveralls, 2 pairs, 3 pairs of gloves, depending upon what the situation is, and actually handling fuel, putting an experiment together by hand, operating that little reactor. So I get kind of a lot of different things, a lot of different experiences that I get to do. So, yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll step in next. I think I've got a couple of different experiences, some similar to Nick's from having worked at the lab, but very different experience working for corporate. I think just as a bit of a disclaimer here, like when you go into nuclear, you will be able to find something that fits your flavor of how active and hands-on you like to be versus, if you prefer like an office environment and the different perks and drawbacks that come along with that. I think it's all well and good, and you'll have to find something that eventually you fit. And if you're hopping around your first couple of years to figure it out, sometimes that is necessary to find what you like most of all. But working for corporate, and keep in mind that when anybody is ever speaking for a company, that they are always representing themselves. I get the delight where I can roll out of bed at just about any flexible hour and roll into the office as long as I'm in at, the most frequently worked hours. So most days I will go into office. There's a lot of flexibility where I can work from home if I want to or if I need to. But my days largely consist of a lot of human interaction, a lot of technical document review and commentary, and a lot of that is owed to the fact that I am a licensing engineer. So I don't quite touch the design as much as some of the other folks who do the modeling would do, but I do provide a lot of feedback exactly on what we have to do to get, regulator authorization or licensure, how we're supposed to interact with the people that we are working with and keep regular communications with, helping plan general things on the project and deliverables to see where and how they go. If you told me when I was an undergrad that I would have worked in the schedule, I probably would have looked at you like you grew 2 heads, but by nature of the job, that is part of a necessary evil, but It is also part problem solving, whether I like it or not. So it's a bit of a brain teaser there. But working for Savannah River was completely different because it was a much more rigid structure, very shift engineer similar, or very just shift work similar, because you had a couple windows of time where you would be driving to site or driving away from site with about a flood of however many hundred people that were going there and going back with you to work usually around a 10-hour shift, because I find a lot of times at labs you do 4 10s instead of working the standard 9 to 5. And there you'll either be in an office position, or you could also be working, physically in and around a DOE site. I found that when I was working criticality safety, it was quite a nice mix of the two, where I got to spend a fair amount of time holed away, doing a lot of modeling and calcs. And whenever I wanted a breath of fresh air, I could go to where the facility is a walk down. So there's definitely different things to fit whatever you're looking for at the time.
Yeah, so just a little bit on what I was doing in the internship experience that I had. Mostly like what I was doing was helping with like the boring parts of taking measurements, but to me everything was new, so I was having fun with everything. So just like running the experiments, running the runs, like getting all the data, and then basically I was taught how to like analyze it using like different codes, and like it was my first time working with like root files, which are like really high energy, like gamma data. So that was really interesting, and I got to like put a whole presentation about it at the end. But I think definitely what the difference was from like basic school is that you go into the office and you have like flexible hours, like you can get there like relatively whenever you want. But what Madeline said, like during major working hours, you're there, you're getting your work done, and then you get to go home and not have to do work afterward, which I think was the major part that I liked.
Thanks, guys. That's great. Um, I know you guys talked about how much time you spend and the flexibility of sometimes being in the lab and sometimes being in the office. How often do you collaborate with other engineers or departments? It's kind of funny because before we started the presentation, Nick and Maddie were talking about how they're currently collaborating. So maybe you guys could tell us about that. And then Grace, tell us, in the student experience, do you collaborate with other majors? I'm assuming in certain coursework you would, so maybe you want to highlight that. So we'll start with Nick and Maddie and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and so Los Alamos in particular, it's much larger than most people think. I think we're at like 17,000 employees now, so it's pretty big. Um, and it's kind of a unique place because you can basically just pick any subject, like any technical subject, and there's probably 2 or 3 of the world's experts that, sit like 2 buildings over from me, So I get to collaborate with tons and tons of people. So material scientists, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, people that studied math, physics, computer science, you name the field, I get to work with them and solve problems with them, which I really love. And then outside of that, I also, not just outside of Lionel, I also work with people from other national labs like Oak Ridge and Idaho National Lab, people inside the Department of Energy, and then we have a collaboration with Westinghouse that I'm leading. There's a few other companies that we work with, and then we have some international partners as well, including the Institute for Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety over in France. And then we have another collaboration right now related to Fukushima as well. So you get to work with tons and tons of people.
Yeah. So as mentioned, Nick and I were working together, asterisk on that. For a little while, I filled in as a fuels lead on the same program, and that was passed off and we hired somebody else. And I went back to my full-time job, my daytime job, as we call it. But full disclaimer, I'm a very social person. You can probably see and hear it, and it's not necessarily applicable to everybody, but because of the nature of my job, I get to talk with a variety of people on a daily basis in departments very far and away from my own. I get to touch very many disciplines, and I find that I'm learning about as much as I am trying to teach. So I found it to be very enriching. I find it to be quite nice doing the whole licensing engineer gig, but really part of that depends on being a bit of a social butterfly. The tempo was a lot slower when I was doing criticality safety, and I got to work with the same folks day in and day out, just knowing and understanding a single facility, working on processes. So it varies depending on where you go and what you're doing. I've found that since moving to corporate, I get to do and interact with people that are both across the company. I get to interact with individuals at different sites. I get to go do, the enriching kind of professional development events where I'm talking to folks outside of the company and working on myself and my soft skills, which I would encourage you heavily to do, even if you don't like being a social butterfly. And I also get the chances to work with external customers in my position. So even though I'm not really working with Nick right now, I've still got a variety of folks that I'm in contact with. So
Yeah, so just like within school, I'd say right now, I think half of my classes are nuclear only. So I still have a lot of interaction with people that are not nuclear majors, and our major is pretty small anyway, so you basically know everyone. But outside of that, like I think it's nicer to have a smaller major, I'd say, because you do have relationships with everyone. But yeah, you do get interactions with people with other majors.
I think one of the things that I forgot to mention, but is also really dear to me. I also work with a lot of students. So we have summer interns that will come in during the summer, but we also have some year-round students, especially people that are working on their like advanced degrees or have just finished their advanced degrees. Then they're not really students, but I get to help mentor those students. I'm also on 2 PhD committees, so 2 people that are doing their PhD. I'm on their committees as well. So I get to work with universities. And then depending upon your job, there's lots of jobs that you get to go to various conferences as well. And you get to meet tons of people throughout the field as well. So next week, I'll actually be in Vienna at the IEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, to meet with some folks there. So, yeah.
It's amazing. Now, we're going to talk about the specifics. So, both of you have highlighted kind of the soft skill aspect of things. So, when we drill down into like the undergrad experience, I would love for you to elaborate on things that you would recommend our current students that they could do to cultivate those skills. And we're going to talk about undergrad for right now. We know you were heavily involved on campus and are heavily involved on campus. So I'd love for you to tell us about your undergrad experience, thinking back when you were here. Um, and what organizations or clubs would you recommend? I know Grace mentioned the music department, and there's so much that campus has to offer. So where do you even start, and what did you do? So let's start with Nick, and we'll go around again.
Yeah, I did a lot of different things when I was at RPI. Um, everything from some intramural sports like soccer, stuff like that. I was also part of the American Nuclear Society. I actually became the chair at one point, but that's a while ago. I was involved in student government. I was actually a grad student. I was in the graduate student council and the executive board as well. But there's so many different areas where you can just learn all sorts of different skills, do different things, meet different people. Especially, early on, just try out for all sorts of different clubs and everything, and see what you like, see, what you don't. There's so many great clubs at RPI. So like one of them, for example, that I really liked back when I was in the e-board rep, I got to visit a lot of the different clubs, and I got to see the players and work with them for a few days, and that was just such a cool experience to go help and build sets and stuff like that. So Yeah, there's so many different things you can do at RPI, and I would definitely just, just branch out as much as possible and try everything.
I think that's really good advice, Nick. I can't say I did it. I probably would have disappointed you when I was an undergrad. I did a lot of the industry specific professional societies. I did both Women in Nuclear and American Nuclear Society. I spent probably more time in WIN, but that's all right. That's what happens when some of your seniors guilt you into it. But that's all right. That's what they call succession planning. So I spent time doing those. My final couple of years, I did the Maine Student Advisory Council, if that's still around, and I was also involved in the Forge. Spent a lot of time doing those things, but I also spent time just with my peers and forming a lot of the friendships. I think you'll find that depending on who you hang out with and what you like to do, a lot of the professional clubs are a good way to supplement some of the experiences and the networking that you need to do. But there's also no shame if you happen to like, I don't know if there's a good way to say this, but if you just want to get a group of your friends and play Minecraft a couple times a week as like a de-stressor and to just continue to build your personal bonds with people, that's perfectly fine too. You can call it your own little club. But at the end of the day, as long as you are tailoring and enjoying the time you have while making use of, where you can connect to others and some of the unique opportunities presented to you, you don't need to go like 100% all the time, even if it sounds like some of us are doing that. 4 years, a lot can happen in 4 years, and that's just 4 years. Nick spent a whole lot more time than that.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I think it's really important to have activities that aren't necessarily academic as well, just so you can de-stress. Obviously, the school is pretty difficult and very rigorous, so having those activities that you don't have to think about, like what a proton is and stuff like that, is definitely helpful. I think my main way that I thought about it when I came in, because I was heavily involved in different activities in high school and stuff like that, is I kind of just found a bunch of clubs that were similar to what I was already doing in high school, just to try to find people that would have been doing similar stuff. And that's how I met a lot of my friends doing that. But yeah, I think I like to be really busy all the time, so I did join a lot of clubs right off the bat, and yeah.
One other thing that I should mention, there's a program called the Nuclear Engineering Student Delegation. And so I think it's about 15 students every year that go to DC and work on policy, basically. So you meet with senators and representatives and all sorts of the departments and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Department of Energy. And it's a really, really great experience if you can do it. Typically, I think, Grace, you're actually probably the right timing for it. But typically, once you're like junior, senior, that's like a really good time to be looking for it. But I did that for a few years and really enjoyed my time as well.
Awesome. You guys have great experiences. Um, so going back to being undeclared, I think a lot of the conversations that we have with undeclared students is a little bit of hesitation about declaring nuclear as a major because it's considered something that would be like niche. And, the questions are always like, am I going to be able to get a job? What's going to happen to my engineering degree? And, we try to establish, as you guys already talked about, the interdisciplinary relationships, how, you could work various roles. But what else do you feel, give me your perspective on the current job market for new graduates in this field. Do you think that there would be any issues finding employment?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there in the nuclear field. Um, the nuclear field is one of them that does have different waves, and things come and go. But right now, there's definitely a lot of opportunities out there. A lot of different companies are hiring, and I think it is something that you do want to think about a little bit, because it's not like there's a nuclear reactor in every single town in the country. So there are certain places that are going to have lots of opportunities and certain places that aren't. And if you are really in love with one specific place or really want to go back to your hometown and work there, then it might not be the best fit for that. But if you do love the field and are okay with moving at least a little bit, or you just get lucky in where you're living, then I think it's really a great opportunity. There's a lot of great opportunities out there, I should say. So yeah.
I think that's a good perspective, Nick. Couple of good things that you highlighted that I want to reiterate is that nuclear really has its own boom and bust cycle. It doesn't always follow economic trends, and I think we're very much on an upswing right now. There's been a lot of investment in new reactor technologies, advancements, and a lot of investment in expansion of different types of fuels, even sort of separate from the different reactor technologies. A lot of the investment that you'll see growth and opportunity wise is usually tied to what's going to be happening in 20 years, because it takes a really long time to develop nuclear technology. But that also means that you get a pretty long runway to see where your career can go and where things can start to happen. So very handy in that sense. But in another sense, on being location restricted, it also means that the opportunities to live in certain places are limited, but you can also start to predict, where do I want to live, and you can start to narrow down based on who is where and what opportunities are in each space. So it's actually sort of nice in the sense where you can start shopping around and you can say, okay, what kind of an employer do I want? What kind of a location do I want to live in, like temperament wise, or like close to, whatever resources you may want to have. And it's actually not that bad from my point of view. I thought that I would have had a really hard time settling in because I've got like a US and Canadian citizenship, and I wanted to remain somewhat close to the border, and I've tried all sorts of different places. I lived out on the West Coast for a little bit. I lived down in South Carolina. I'm back up in Pennsylvania. I thought even temporarily about going and working for Ontario Power Generation. And I mean, there are a lot of opportunities depending on where and how you look, and also whether or not you enjoy travel. I happen to enjoy the process, so it wasn't necessarily so hard to settle in for me. But that also goes back to what you want to do with your lives. If you haven't considered it, and even if it is really daunting, if you're undeclared or thinking of swapping majors, 10 out of 10, I would recommend doing a 10-year plan. That was some of the first wisdom given to me by my own dear old father, who said, even if you do know what you want to do, I think that you should lay out, where you think you can be in a decade, what you think you can do in the near term to change that, and then what kind of deltas you should be looking to sort of fill in the next 5 years in order to get to where you think you want to go. And I think one of the things that people leave out of the 10-year plan is a lot of the life planning, what you want to do around family and where you want to be. And when you can start to answer those important questions, it will really start to narrow down what you want to do, especially because we are in, as I think I've said, a bit of a boom as far as nuclear is going, with investment towards many different opportunities. So take a minute, sit with yourself, and even if it is kind of hard, start trying to pin down bits and pieces. You can even take it in multiple paths if you want and say, A, B, and C, this is where I could be, in all sorts of sets. So it'll definitely help you narrow those things down.
And I think one other thing is, just because you get a degree in nuclear engineering doesn't mean you're always going to be a nuclear engineer forever. I know a lot of people who have nuclear engineering degrees, but then they wanted to do something else. So, one of my friends works in the biomedical field. I have a few friends at IBM. They're doing, computer science stuff. There's another one that's doing like AI, models and stuff at NVIDIA. Just because you have a degree in nuclear engineering doesn't necessarily mean you're pigeonholed into that forever, right? And I think a lot of employers, especially that aren't in the nuclear engineering field, they see nuclear engineering like, oh, you must be really smart, and so I think that helps a little bit. So, yeah.
I think it's a good thing to mention, Nick, and the converse also works true. Like if you decide that you don't want to take your nuclear classes and you want to start in like chemi or civi, or even if you wanted to do like materials or mechanical, it's more the types of backgrounds and experiences that you get more than the title of your degree. Because if you can meet the right people and justify what your skills are and where you're good for learning, then you can pick essentially whatever job you want.
Those are great points. Thank you. I should take some of this advice as well. Um, so going forward, we talked about, you were saying, Nick, how you have friends with nuclear engineering degrees who do various things. But going back to make yourself marketable as a nuclear engineer, are there specializations, guys, that you feel a current student could do to enhance their marketability? What skills and qualifications are more sought for, like by employers?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you want to do, right? Um, I think, if you want to do anything like research related, then having some extra computer science background is going to help a lot. Because if you're doing anything with data, being able to write and analyze code and analyze your data and whatnot is going to be really, really important. I think lots of employers these days, if you know a few programming languages or Python or something like that, that helps a lot. I think also, you know, um, yeah, depending upon like where you want to go in the field, because there's like nuclear is a small field, but it's made up of many, many other smaller fields. Um, so like, Madeline used to be in nuclear criticality safety, right? That's a very, very niche in a niche, But we actually do have a class related to nuclear criticality safety, or at least we did a few years ago. I don't know if they still offer it. If you're interested in one of those small fields, I would definitely look at what nuclear electives are offered and try to make sure you take those. And if there is, a certain thing that you want to learn about, and there isn't a class offered, I would start talking to some professors, because you can try to get like an independent study set up for that specific thing. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize is, if there's not something offered, you might be able to get it offered anyway. So, but yeah, I think definitely computer science, that helps a lot. Yeah.
I think one of my friends did an independent study specific for materials engineering when they went, past any of the nuclear classes or nuclear specific materials classes available to them. So it is worth doing, and from what I heard, it was quite enjoyable. But if I had to recommend skills and specializations, I think one thing is, if you're ever worried about getting hired, Nick is right that criticality safety may be an extremely like small and narrow thing, but you will almost always get hired, guaranteed. Everyone needs a criticality safety engineer for process examinations and for essentially allowing your work to continue, because it's generally a required position if you're handling fissile material. So some of those positions will always exist regardless of how you feel about nuclear power. So if you're really worried about it, that's an option. But what I would say, I agree with Nick that coding is pretty essential. You don't need to be a master at it, even if you do or do not plan on handling data. I got by on what I would call parlor tricks in Python, and despite never really formally learning the language, I learned enough to scrape by and make my own lazy life a little bit easier. It very much helps. But if you're looking more generally and you're thinking about, ducking out after your 4 years, or you want to move into industry and keep going, I think at a bare minimum, having some experience with modeling in, MCMP, which I think you should still be doing classes where you'll be given the opportunities, take that. If you have the opportunity to learn Serpent or anything in what we would call the animal code suites like Moose, Bison, any of those, worth a shot. ANSYS may also help, but if you can learn how to use some modeling tools, you'll be a lot further than the individuals who don't. And also, if you know soft skills, how to communicate an idea, how to do an elevator pitch, how to write something succinctly, and even what we would say, dumbing down explanations, the nicest way to put it, because you will find a lot of people at every level will talk with very professional terminology. And in many cases, that's hard for people who aren't part of those similar circles to understand. And if you're trying to get through the first few blocks of the application process somewhere and you've thrown your application into a void, you best hope that you better be able to speak to somebody from HR who may have no experience, as well as speak to the hiring manager and other professionals they bring in there to drill you. So it is good to learn how to talk, and it's good to learn how to model.
Yeah, I think related to the soft skills as well, I think management can also help, depending upon, what you want to do in your career. Having some classes in management can help too.
Yeah, we still have the MEng to MBA program. And Peggy McDermott, who's the professor that runs the program, is actually an engineer. So, shameless plug for that, because first year students are really encouraged to connect with us if they're interested in that program. And, having an MBA and cultivating those soft skills, as you guys talked about, is important. We also have the professional development sequences that the engineering students take. And I'm sure, Grace, have you taken the PDs as of yet?
Yeah, so I took PD2 last year. And honestly, it was really interesting to see, and it was all about like technical failures and stuff like that, which I think we deal with a lot with as nuclear engineers. And then right now I'm taking PD3, which is like the leadership competency one. So yeah, I think those are definitely very helpful with presenting skills and stuff like that. That's not necessarily like technical, but it's the way that you can present your technical ideas.
Yeah, so we push students to take those actually earlier rather than later now, because we encourage so many students to attend the career fairs and, try to get those internships and opportunities sooner than later, because there's a lot you could squeeze in 4 years or more with good planning. So we recently had a career fair on campus, and this question's for all of you. Can you explain to students how you navigated those career fairs while you were here, and Grace, how you might have done so at this time? And can you offer some tips to students to how to effectively prepare? Because I think engineers have a reputation of being a little bit standoffish when it comes to those soft skills. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit more outside of taking those management classes. What can you do to prepare? So open to all of you.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned that the CCPD does like mock interviews. That's a really good way to prepare, because they'll ask you questions, and it'll be very, very similar questions that a recruiter will ask. I think taking some time to have a few people look over your resume is also going to be really important, because I've done some of the career fairs in the past, and there's a line of 20 people at the booth, and you only have 3 minutes to talk to each person or whatever it is. And so that recruiter is going to read and skim the resume in a matter of seconds. So making sure that a few people look over it, and a few of the really important things that you've done are highlighted is important. And then I think once you actually go to the career fair, make sure you're dressed well, of course. But for each company that you are really interested in, I would do some research, right? You can do some research that, a day, 2 days before, whatever it is. And it doesn't take that much time, but at least knowing what each of those companies does and what sort of jobs are open, what sort of fields they work in, is going to be really important, because then it shows that you actually did some work, and you're not just being like, oh, hey, who are you? Hire me. So I think those are a few different things.
Those are good points to make, Nick. And I think sometimes you'll have a lot of success at career fairs, but if you're anything like me, you probably wouldn't have. Despite whatever very social persona I have now, I was an extremely awkward mess when I tried attending my own career fairs. And despite the number of people that I had go over my resume and the number of conversations I'd attempted to have with people, I had very little success. It is always worth what they would call the good old college try. It will force you to get yourself out there, and you will have a chance to practice your elevator pitch for yourself but sometimes the only thing you will get at the end of the day is probably some company swag. But have no fear, there are other venues, especially around career fair time. A lot of your professional societies will try to bring in speakers and representatives for companies to talk a little bit about what the company does. It's a very good way to start to do networking and to get contacts where you can reach out and ask questions and demonstrate interest. It also helps you do some research at the same time, and usually it comes with food, so they're pretty good benefits all around there. And when I was in undergrad, it was actually through my networking and connections I had with people that got me every single internship and job I worked. So never underestimate the power of making friends and taking things at your own pace or at a smaller, more comfortable level. Also, never underestimate the power of cold calling. I know that Nick, as my new godfather, I said, Nick, do you know anybody who's doing, like advanced reactor development? And Nick had people and he said, here, I'll connect you to them. And that is how networking starts. You reach out to the people who are above you. And fundamentally, one of the things that you do have to rely on as a student and as a young professional is the goodwill of others to mentor and to bring you into the world. So finding yourself strong mentor connection figures, and even if they are not people you've met at the career fair, will always help. And when in doubt, if you really have nothing else, just hit somebody up on LinkedIn and ask them what the coolest thing about their job is, because you're a student and you were thinking about going to do it. People love to talk about themselves. So it will help.
Yeah, I agree with what Madeline said a lot because it's definitely a hit or miss. I think especially for smaller majors. Um, Last year in the spring was my first time going to a career fair, so I definitely started out a little bit later than usual. But it was really good just to like talk to a bunch of people, start getting that like more technical talking professional environment. Um, but also you also have to keep in mind that the people coming aren't always like the ones that are specific on the nuclear projects. Like I did a bunch of research into a bunch of different companies, and I think I went up to one company that kind of has a wider scope. Like they do have like specifically nuclear, but I was talking to the recruiter and like she had no idea about the projects that they were doing. But then I talked to another guy and he was like the lead on the nuclear project. So I think definitely it is a hit or miss on what you're going to find at the career fair, especially for a smaller major.
Awesome, guys. And we're coming up on time, so I'm going to ask you one question that I think the students would appreciate because RPI is hard. So tell me what courses or course you found to be the most challenging as a student here, and that could be to date or obviously reflecting on. And what did you do to ensure your success? We try to give pep talks daily in the hub, but hearing it directly from the students that are on the ground, it's always kind of a different perspective. So feel free to share, all of you.
Yeah. Physics of nuclear reactors with Dr. Danone. That's it. It will probably always wear the crown, and it takes perseverance more than anything else. I would say you are given all of the resources in the world, and it is up to you what you do with them and whether or not you learn the fundamentals of the material. It is very much one of those make or break situations. But when you do make it through, you know that you have made it. You understand all of the core principles that you should going into nuclear engineering, and talking about, a lot of the basics, just as far as how things work, the kinds of information and lectures that people don't generally see or think about when they hear things related to nuclear power or neutrons, or any of the kinds of things that just dictate a lot of the behavior that you will end up seeing if you go into one of the more stereotypically nuclear positions, especially something if you look at a reactor operator. Those are the kinds of principles that you need for safe operations and conduct. So it is difficult, but justifiably so. The ways that I got through it was, I believe that this would be referred to as trauma bonding with my classmates, and doing a lot of group work where we would sit probably for hours at a time on the same question and would go through until one of us cracked the code and learned enough to help try to walk the others through it. I will also make a shout out to probably one of my favorite freeware programs that I learned of in those days called SMath. It worried about the units for me, so all I had to worry about was getting the math to work.
Yeah, I think PNR is probably the hardest. It's yeah, physics of nuclear reactors. It's a very hard class. Um, I actually did well in it. I'm not sure how, but I I like the material, but yes, it was a very hard class, and I had you know there was a smaller group of us that would work on homework problems together. Many late nights in the union where we have all the tables next to each other and everyone's just trying to read through the textbook and understand the question, everything. So um, but yeah, that's probably the hardest. Yeah.
I'm currently taking physics of nuclear reactors. So yeah. But I'd say like but before this year, just like freshman and sophomore year, I think I definitely hit like my first wall was thermodynamics because it's definitely not something that I was specifically like interested in. So I kind of had to, it was kind of like the first like challenging course that I took because I didn't like necessarily align with my interests. And then I think the second one, it's not necessarily difficult, it's just that you really do have to do all of the work and make sure you understand everything is NumPy, which is like the coding class for engineers. And I honestly think like I tried as hard as I could. I did like went to office hours, all of that stuff. And all of the basis that I learned in coding is like what got me through my summer internship. And I honestly did take away coding knowledge from it. So I definitely think that don't try to just like brush through it, get through it, like actually understand what you're doing because you will be using those skills.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm not sure if it impacted Maddie, but we switched over from the 1 credit beginning programming, and Maine developed a 3 credit version called numerical methods and programming, which is what Grace was referring to, just as a point of reference for our alum here. Um, so I think we're close to wrapping it up. I wanted to give the opportunity for our attendees to ask any questions. I don't see any questions in the chat as of now, but if you do have questions for our panelists, please write them in so we can address those, because you guys got some great resources at your fingertips here. So type away. But while we're closing, I wanted to know, thinking back to your first year as a student here, what do you wish you knew then that you know now? Because that's always something that, you know, you, knowledge is always hindsight, I think, in a lot of ways. So tell me what you feel as students are thinking about questions.
I was a
Yeah, I
risk-averse
think
person.
one of the lessons actually is what Grace just said, is taking the time to actually learn the material, right?
Yeah.
Because there was a few courses, especially in my freshman year, that like, I just like tried to do the homework really fast, and if I got not the greatest grade, whatever, my homework was done, I could go back to playing video games or whatever. So. Yeah, and my grades did suffer, that first year because, I was having a lot of fun doing other stuff and I wanted to do other stuff. But it's really important to learn the material because this is stuff that you're going to be using for the rest of your life. And it really helps to know the material. I think another thing is just in general, don't get discouraged. It can be really easy to get discouraged if you get a bad grade or something like that. And just you just got to stick with it and keep working through it because you'll get there. But yeah, there can definitely be some low lows when you're studying engineering. And then yeah, the last thing that I didn't mention before, but in your senior year, if there's a project from Los Alamos, pick that one for senior design because I'm one of the mentors.
That's a good message, Nick. I think holding on to hope is a good one. At the end of the day, you're going to RPI. If you can struggle through, then you will make it through and everything will turn out all right. It's very hard to not get hired, personally, just from what I've seen. But I think I went in as a very risk averse individual. I started a lot shyer than I am now. And I think that it would have been nice if I could have, eased a lot of those worries by telling myself not to not worry, but that you need to have time to grow because you're still very young while you're at RPI and the world is starting to open up around you. So you are not only dealing with a monumental personal change, you're also dealing with difficult classes and learning how to navigate a lot of the world. So take a second, breathe, and even if you are struggling through it, you will get there at the end of the day, even if your path looks a little bit different from your peers. Also, just in hindsight, since it's 2020, I started as a very risk averse person. If I had managed to, or if I had decided not to pass fail something so I didn't need to study for a final, I would have a minor in economics right now. So always take a little bit of risk. You'll get a reward for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to echo everything that was already said, but definitely I would try to get out of your comfort zone, try to have new experiences, open yourself up to it. I think I came in trying to try everything, and it really has paid off with like the experience that I have already. And I think like college is the time to have all of these experiences because that you have so many opportunities open to you right now. Definitely like before you decide on a career and just while you're a student in general.
Awesome, guys. Thank you. And I still don't see any questions, right? You're not seeing any? Okay. So we're going to wrap it up. But I'm going to leave this open. If there are questions that come up, I have their contact info. So we could definitely branch out and, throw that out there if anything does come up. And if you have additional questions regarding the major, definitely book a meeting with me because I'm happy to go over all of your options going forward. And I want to thank our panelists. You guys were amazing, and I appreciate you joining us tonight. Yeah, I think this was great. So thank you, and I hope everybody has a good night. And thank you to our attendees as well. And yeah, tomorrow's Tuesday. Let's rock and roll,
Thanks, Kara, for putting this on.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. And I'm going to share the recording. So anybody who wants to see that or share it, feel free, but it's going to be on our website and I'm also going to email it to the panelists as well. So thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.